Imagine walking into a quiet clinic on an ordinary Tuesday, clutching an envelope that has the power to either calm every doubt you've ever had, or destroy the life you thought you were living. That was her reality. For months, she had convinced herself it was just paranoia. Her little boy's smile didn't quite match hers, his eyes carried a shade she couldn't place. But love makes you blind, and suspicion feels like betrayal when you aim it at your own family. Still, curiosity turned into obsession. Behind her husband's back, she ordered a DNA test. She thought the results might reassure her. Instead, they shattered her world. There was no biological connection. Not between her and the boy she had carried, nursed, and sung to sleep every night for 3 years. But between him and her husband, undeniable. Father and son. Her hands trembled as the papers slipped from her grip. She stared into the mirror that night and didn't recognize the woman looking back. Wife. Mother. Or was she either anymore? That's when the questions came like daggers. If this child isn't mine, where is my real baby? Who made this switch? And why? What she didn't know then was that the truth would lead her into the arms of the very woman her husband had been hiding all along, a mistress who believed a single test could break her spirit. But when the results were revealed, it wasn't the wife who screamed. It was the mistress. The mistress thought a single test could break her, but instead, it only made her stronger. 3 days after the truth came crashing down, she found herself sitting in a private lounge, the weight of silence pressing against her chest. Across from her sat a man she had hired in secret, an investigator whose reputation rested on uncovering the things people buried deepest. His voice was steady, but every word felt like a blade. The child she had loved, rocked to sleep, and called her own, was not hers by blood. Her real son had been living elsewhere. Raised under the roof of her husband's parents. It explained years of strange patterns. The missing visits. The excuses about sending the boy away during family holidays. The empty seat at the dinner table whenever she traveled back to their hometown. At the time, she believed them. Now, every excuse burned like a scar. The investigator opened a folder and slid it toward her. Inside were photographs, women who had delivered babies the very night she did. One by one, she studied them, her pulse quickening. And then, she stopped cold. A woman's face stared back at her. Auburn hair, porcelain skin, sharp yet delicate features that carried the same nose, the same lips, the same resemblance she had seen on the little boy. Her name, Hannah Cole. An aspiring actress. Not famous, but visible enough to move in circles where secrets were currency. She had hidden her pregnancy from the public eye, shrouded in silence, protected by whispers and money. The wife's grip tightened on the photograph, her knuckles white. This wasn't coincidence. This was deliberate. And in that moment, she made her vow. She would find Hannah Cole. Not just to demand the truth, but to drag every hidden lie into the light. She sat in the quiet of that lounge, Hannah Cole's face still burning into her mind. The delicate features, the faint smirk caught by the camera, the uncanny resemblance to the boy who had called her mom for 3 years. This wasn't a stranger. This was the woman who had lived in the shadows of her marriage all along. Hannah wasn't just any woman. She was an actress who had slipped her way into the spotlight, not through talent, but through carefully chosen connections. Roles landed in her lap that should have gone to more deserving women, yet she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she'd never have to fight for anything. Someone was protecting her. Someone powerful. The wife leaned back, her heart pounding. If Hannah Cole had carried her child in secret, then this wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. A theft of blood, of legacy, of motherhood itself. And Hannah, no matter how polished her public smile, could never hide the guilt etched deep in her bones. The decision was no longer a question. She would go after Hannah first. Not with screaming accusations, but with silence, patience, and precision. She would force Hannah to reveal herself. But to do that, she would need help. Someone who knew Hannah's world. Someone who could open the doors that were still closed to her. That's when she picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over one name in particular. A name that had never failed her. Her sister. Her thumb pressed down on the screen, and within minutes her sister arrived, stepping into the lounge with the kind of urgency that only family brings. "Tell me everything," she demanded, sliding into the seat across from her. The wife laid it all out. The DNA test, the investigator's findings, the photograph of Hannah Cole. For a moment, her sister sat frozen, then let out a sharp laugh, not of humor but disbelief. "So that's who it is. Hannah. I've heard her name tossed around. She's been climbing faster than she deserves, and everyone knows why. She's wrapped around the arm of a studio executive twice her age. That's how she gets roles, not talent." Her sister leaned in, lowering her voice. "But here's the thing. Hannah's not untouchable. I know her schedule, her connections, even her habits. She's filming right now with one of our company's directors. If you want to see her face to face, I can make it happen." The wife's chest tightened, a rush of determination flooding her veins. She had spent years living in the dark, blinded by lies. But now, for the first time, the path forward was clear. "Do it," she whispered. "Set it up. I want to see how she reacts when she comes face to face with me, and with my son." Her sister didn't hesitate. Pulling out her phone, she began typing rapidly. Within minutes, she had the filming schedule in hand. Miller Square. 2 days from now. Hannah would be there. The wife exhaled slowly, her gaze fixed, her resolve unshakable. The trap was set. 2 days later, the morning air carried a weight she couldn't shake. With her son's small hand tucked in hers, she met her sister at the edge of Miller Square. The film crew had already begun setting up, heavy lights flooding the courtyard, cameras tracking every movement. And there, dressed in a tailored coat, makeup flawless under the harsh glow, stood Hannah Cole. From a distance, she looked every bit the star she pretended to be, smiling for the director, nodding at the assistants. But when the wife drew closer, standing just behind the monitors where playback was being checked, she noticed something Hannah couldn't control. Her smile flickered whenever her eyes darted toward the crowd, as though she feared what might surface there. Her son tugged gently at her sleeve, his eyes wide with curiosity. He stared at the walkie-talkies clipped to the crew's belts, the bright sets, the bustling activity. And then, without warning, he lifted his small water bottle, took a sip, and looked in Hannah's direction. "Mommy." The word cut through the noise like a siren. A few crew members chuckled, brushing it off as a child's innocent mistake. The wife knelt quickly, smoothing his hair, whispering softly, "Sweetheart, Mommy's right here." "That's just an actress." But her eyes never left Hannah. For a single second, the actress froze. Her face drained of color, her lips parting as though the word had pierced her chest. And just as quickly, she masked it with a smile, laughing politely at something the assistant director had said. The wife saw it. That split-second crack in her armor. That was all she needed. Filming resumed, but Hannah's performance faltered. Her lines came slower, her expressions less certain. The director sighed heavily, calling for take after take, but nothing improved. Hannah wasn't distracted by the cameras. She was distracted by the child standing quietly at the edge of the set, the one who had just called her mommy. For the wife, it was confirmation. Hannah Cole wasn't just another actress clawing for fame. She was the woman who had stolen her child, the woman her husband had risked everything to protect. And now, the game had officially begun. The film shoot had ended, but the image of Hannah's faltering smile stayed with her like an ember that refused to die out. She had seen it clearly, the mistress could hide behind lights, scripts, and painted smiles, but in the presence of her child, her mask cracked. A few nights later, at a glittering banquet hall filled with chandeliers and the sound of champagne glasses colliding, that ember flared again. She stood in a quiet corner, her gown flowing like liquid satin, watching her husband weave effortlessly through the crowd. He was in his element, shaking hands, laughing, making promises he would never keep. Once upon a time, she thought that kind of ambition was charming. Now, it only looked ravenous. And then, she heard it. A soft voice. "Excuse me, do you mind if I sit here?" She turned her head, and there she was. Hannah Cole. No stage, no cameras. Just her. She was dressed in a gown the color of ivory, her auburn hair pinned back with delicate strands left to frame her face. She looked almost fragile, the kind of woman people instinctively wanted to protect. A predator disguised as prey. "Please," the wife said calmly, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. Hannah sat, her smile poised but her eyes searching, cautious. "Do you remember me? We met the other day, on set." "Of course," the wife replied, voice smooth. "You were hard to miss." For a moment, silence hovered between them, fragile and sharp. Hannah stirred the fruit on her plate with her fork, her lips curving into something that almost looked melancholy. "I thought you might say you've seen my movies." "I don't watch many," the wife answered, her expression carefully unreadable. Life with a child leaves little time for screens. Hannah's smile deepened, but her eyes flickered. "Children do change everything. My friends say the same thing. Once they became mothers, they began missing out on life. But still, raising a child is a beautiful thing. Your son, he looked very well behaved." The wife leaned forward, her tone gentle but edged with steel. "He is. Though sometimes, he surprises me in ways I never expect." Their eyes locked, two women sitting side by side in a crowded hall, but only one of them knew the storm that was about to break. Before Hannah could respond, another guest approached hurriedly, calling her name. She stood, adjusting her gown with practiced grace. "It was a pleasure speaking with you. I hope we meet again soon." The wife nodded politely, her smile unwavering. "We will." Across the room, her husband glanced toward them, his expression tight, restless. He had seen Hannah approach. He had seen them talk. And now, for the first time, his mask slipped too. That night, the banquet ended with polite goodbyes and glittering smiles, but beneath the surface, the wife could feel the tension simmering. Her husband walked beside her to the car, his expression unusually stiff. He tried to hide it, masking his unease with small talk, but his restless glances gave him away. By the time they reached home, she already knew what he would do next. He would reach for the phone. He would call Hannah. He would need to know what she had said, what she had learned, what she suspected. And she was ready for it. Earlier that week, she had made sure the house was no longer his safe space. A discreet listening device had been hidden in his study, another in the living room. Installed by the investigator. Invisible, untraceable. She didn't have to guess anymore, she could hear the truth in his own voice. So when he excused himself and disappeared into his study, she quietly slipped away to her bedroom, shut the door, and pressed her earphones in. His voice came first, low, urgent, agitated. "Why did you talk to her tonight? What if you slipped up?" The film set was already too risky. Then came Hannah's reply, casual, almost mocking. "Relax. It was nothing. I just wanted to see how she'd react. Don't worry, she doesn't suspect a thing. She's naive, too trusting. She has no idea what we've done." The wife's chest tightened as she gripped the phone harder. Every word confirmed what she had feared. Her husband's voice cut back in, sharper now. "Don't play games with this. One wrong move and everything falls apart. Do you understand?" Hannah's laughter followed. Soft, cold, dripping with disdain. "You're scared she'll find out the truth? That we planned it all from the beginning? That her child was never hers to keep?" The wife's blood ran cold. She had suspected betrayal, but this was theft by design. Calculated. Merciless. Her husband's tone softened, almost pleading now. "We need to be careful." "Not yet. I still need her. Her family. Her money. If I lose that too soon, everything collapses." But once the company is secure, I'll leave her. I'll leave everything. And then we'll be together properly. There it was. The confession. Not just of betrayal, but of intention. A roadmap of deceit laid bare in his own words. Alone in her room, she closed her eyes, her heart pounding, not with sorrow this time, but with resolve. They thought she was blind. They thought she was broken. But they had underestimated her. The trap was already closing. She pulled the earphones out slowly, her pulse still racing. The words echoed in her mind, not yet. I still need her. Once the company is secure, I'll leave her. Her lips curved into a cold smile. He thought she was nothing more than a bridge to cross. But he had just handed her the rope to tighten around his own neck. Moments later, she dialed her sister. It was late, but within half an hour they sat together in the kitchen, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the marble counter. Her sister listened in silence, jaw tightening as the recording played back through the small device. When it ended, she slammed her hand against the table. They're worse than I thought. They don't just want you out, they want everything. Your family, your fortune, your legacy. They want to erase you. The wife leaned forward, her voice calm, deliberate. Then we erase them first. Piece by piece. Her sister narrowed her eyes. What's the plan? She pulled the photograph of Hannah from the folder, sliding it across the table. We use her weakness. She wants attention. She wants fame. She hides behind powerful men because she has no talent of her own. So let's give her exactly what she craves, and then tear it all away. Her sister's lips curled into a knowing grin. Publicity. Exactly. If she stages a fake romance with a rising actor, the media will eat it alive. And when she's at the peak of her so-called relevance, we drop the truth, her affair, the lies, the betrayal. She'll have nowhere to hide. Her sister was already pulling out her phone, scrolling through contacts. I can make that happen. I know exactly who to call. Give me a week, and she'll be the center of gossip columns everywhere. The wife nodded, eyes sharp with determination. Good. While you set the stage, I'll make sure we have undeniable proof. No whispers. No speculation. Evidence so strong the world can't look away. For the first time in months, she felt control return to her hands. The betrayal had gutted her, but now it was fuel. The game was no longer about survival. It was about revenge. The plan was set in motion like clockwork. While her sister manipulated strings behind the scenes, whispering into the right ears and planting seeds in the entertainment press, the investigator worked in silence, tracking movements, following patterns, waiting for the perfect opening. It came sooner than expected. A luxury resort, private enough to keep curious eyes away, but careless enough to leave one crucial flaw: windows that stretched from ceiling to floor. The investigator caught them there. Her husband and Hannah Cole, embracing, kissing, their silhouettes framed by the glass. For once, they had forgotten to close the curtains. It was a moment of arrogance, of comfort in their deceit. A single mistake, but fatal. The camera clicked, the footage recorded, every damning second preserved in crystal clarity. When the wife saw it, her chest tightened, not with heartbreak but with grim satisfaction. This is it, she thought. The beginning of their end. Her sister moved swiftly. Within days, gossip sites exploded with rumors of Hannah's new romance with a popular young actor. Photographs surfaced of them dining together, walking side by side, smiles carefully staged for the camera. Fans went wild, hashtags trended, and for the first time in her career, Hannah basked in the kind of attention she had always craved. And then, right as the frenzy reached its peak, the truth dropped. The affair. The secret meetings. The video from the resort. Social media didn't just turn, it erupted. Fans of the actor turned on her instantly, accusing her of using him as a shield. Others dug deeper, pulling apart her past, exposing a trail of lies she thought had been buried. Old stories of bullying surfaced. Records of sudden withdrawals from school. Even whispers of the men who had quietly funded her rise. Her so-called protector, the studio executive who once paraded her as his discovery, found himself dragged into the storm as well. Screenshots of her private posts leaked, posts mocking him, ridiculing his gullibility, confessing in veiled words that he was nothing more than a stepping stone. And through it all, one detail gained the most traction. The married man at the center of it all. Her husband. His name and face hit the internet like wildfire. Suddenly, every deal he had been chasing, every connection he had built, every ounce of respectability he had cultivated, gone in a matter of hours. The trap had sprung. But she wasn't done yet. The internet burned with their names, but inside her home she lit a different kind of fire. She didn't scream, didn't confront, didn't throw the evidence in his face. That would have given him clarity, a fight he could prepare for. Instead, she became what he least expected, broken, trembling, wounded. When he returned that evening, his suit still carrying the scent of cologne and champagne, he found her sitting at the edge of the bed, her face streaked with tears. Papers were scattered across the floor, the damning images positioned just where he could see them. He froze in the doorway. For a moment, the mask slipped. Panic. Guilt. But then he forced a calm expression, stepping inside slowly. "Darling, it's not what it looks like." Her shoulders shook as she whispered, "How long? How long have you been lying to me?" He rushed forward, dropping to his knees, his voice dripping with desperation. "I made a mistake, one mistake. I was drunk." She meant nothing. "Please, don't let this ruin us." She turned her face away, letting the silence stretch, her breath ragged as if she were breaking all over again. Inside, she was steady as stone. Every tear, every tremble was an act. A performance he would never see through. He pressed harder, grabbing her hands. "Think of our son. Don't do this to him. Don't do this to us." "I'll cut her off, I swear it." She was a distraction, nothing more. A sob slipped from her lips, perfectly timed. "If you love me at all, if you love our family, prove it. Show me you'll change." That was all it took. His resolve shattered. He nodded fiercely, relief flooding his face. "I will. I'll give up everything. No more drinking, no more mistakes. Please, just give me one more chance." She let him pull their son into the room, watched as he coaxed the little boy to plead on his behalf. And then she let herself cry into her child's hair, whispering words of forgiveness, words he was desperate to believe. He thought she was folding. He thought he had won her heart back. But every sob, every touch, every quiet word of reconciliation was carefully placed, calculated, and controlled. Because this wasn't forgiveness. This was the setup for his destruction. He believed her tears. He believed the trembling forgiveness. For a short time, he walked lighter, convinced that his marriage, his reputation, even his empire could still be salvaged. But lies don't stay hidden forever. Not when family pride is at stake. The call came only days later. Her father's voice was sharp, stripped of warmth. "Bring him. Bring your husband. Both of you. Tonight." When they arrived at the estate, the air inside was thick with tension. In the living room, her father sat at the head of a long table, his face stone. Beside him were lawyers, shareholders, and trusted family confidants, people who had helped build the legacy she was born into. Their stares were cold, unblinking. Her mother ushered their son quietly into the garden, away from the storm that was about to break. Then her father leaned forward. "Are you aware," he asked, his voice heavy and deliberate, "that your husband has been carrying on an affair with that woman? That actress?" A silence followed, so sharp it rang in her ears. She lowered her gaze, feigning embarrassment. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "One night. He's promised me it won't happen again." Her father's laugh was bitter, cutting through the room like glass. "A mistake? That's what you call this?" While our name, is dragged through the mud? While the world mocks this family because of him? She clenched her husband's hand tightly, deliberately, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, don't humiliate him like this. He's already sorry. I've forgiven him." Her father's eyes narrowed, anger burning behind them. Forgiven him? Diana, when did your standard fall this low? He disgraces you publicly, disgraces us all, and you shield him? You defend him? The room buzzed with murmurs, the weight of judgment pressing down. Finally, her father stood, his voice thunderous. "Then tell me, right here, in front of everyone, are you divorcing him or are you staying?" The wife lifted her chin slowly, forcing her voice to tremble with conviction. "I'm staying." Gasps echoed, her husband exhaled with relief, but her father's face hardened like stone. He turned to the lawyers, to the shareholders, to every witness in the room. "Then so be it. From this day forward, she is no longer the heir. No longer tied to this company. No longer tied to us. Let the world know. My daughter has chosen him over her blood." The wife sat perfectly still, every eye on her, the weight of disownment crashing down like fire. Her husband gripped her hand harder, whispering, "It'll be okay. We'll rebuild together." But inside, she was smiling. Because this was exactly where she needed him, clinging to her, believing he had won, while the ground beneath his feet was already crumbling. The ride home from her father's estate was suffocating. Her husband gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, his jaw set in silence. He had watched her family cut her off, strip her of position, sever her from the empire she was born to inherit. And though she sat quietly in the passenger seat, appearing fragile, wounded, betrayed, inside, she was waiting for what would come next. He finally pulled the car over, the engine humming low in the night. His voice broke the silence, softer than she expected. "Sweetheart, we can't keep going like this. Your father will never accept me. He'll destroy you if we stay together. Maybe we should divorce. Just for now. Just until things calm down." The words hung between them, the solution he thought he had crafted. He believed he was protecting her. He believed he was sacrificing for her. But in truth, he was handing her the very weapon she needed. Tears welled in her eyes, tears she summoned with precision. "A divorce? You mean, you'd leave me?" He reached for her hands, panic in his voice. "No. Not leave. Just a temporary step. On paper only. Once your father softens, once we rebuild, we'll remarry. Nothing has to change between us. I don't want you to lose everything because of me." She let the silence stretch, let her lips tremble as though she were torn in two. Finally, she nodded slowly, whispering, "If that's what you think is best." Relief washed over his face. He pulled her into his arms, pressing his lips to her forehead. "Trust me. This is only temporary. I'll make it up to you. I'll prove myself. And when your father sees that, he'll have no choice but to bring us back in." But what he didn't know was that this temporary divorce was the beginning of his permanent collapse. Within days, the papers were signed. He left their home, but their connection never truly severed. They still spoke, still met, still planned, just as he believed they would. Only now, he carried the weight of independence, forced to stand on his own. And with his newfound freedom, he began chasing the one thing that had always driven him, money. He borrowed, he invested recklessly, he poured everything into opportunities he didn't fully understand. He convinced himself he was building a future worth crawling back to her family with. What he didn't see was the trap beneath his feet, the ground giving way with every desperate step. And she, quiet, watchful, patient, was waiting for the moment he would fall through. The weeks that followed became a blur of his desperation. He begged lenders for cash, pitched hollow promises to investors, and funneled everything he had into ventures that promised fortune but delivered nothing. He sold assets, mortgaged properties, and still it wasn't enough. His shoulders slumped lower with every passing day, but his arrogance kept him running toward ruin. She watched it all unfold with the patience of someone who already knew the ending. And when his walls began to truly crack, she struck. It started with a visit. Not by her, but by her sister, walking through the doors of his parents' modest home with a polite smile and a simple excuse. She asked me to check in on you. That's when the truth surfaced. In that house was a boy. Her boy. The child who carried her eyes, her smile, the blood she thought she had lost forever. Her sister brought him to her without fanfare, without spectacle. When she saw him, her breath caught, the world tilting around her. He looked at her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity, and yet, something deeper flickered in his gaze, as though he already knew. The very next day, she ordered DNA tests, hers, the boy's, her husband's, and the child she had raised since birth. The results confirmed what her heart already knew. This was her son. Her flesh and blood. And then, she waited. She didn't go to him quietly. She didn't sit him down with gentle explanations. Instead, she handed him the results in cold silence, standing tall while he sat unshaven, disheveled, the arrogance drained from his face. He read them once, twice, his lips moving without sound. Then, finally, a hollow whisper escaped. "This is impossible." She didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She simply reached out, taking her son's small hand into hers. That's when he snapped, desperation clawing through his voice. "Fine. You want him? Pay off my debts. Give me $1 million, and he's yours." Her laughter was sharp, bitter, cutting through the room like glass. Instead of answering, she pulled her phone from her bag, dialed a single number, and held it to her ear. When the police arrived minutes later, his fury turned to panic. He screamed, he cursed, he begged, but her eyes never softened. Not for him. Not anymore. As the officers dragged him away, she bent down to her son, pulling him close, her voice steady, unshakable. "Both of you are mine now. And I will never let anyone take you away again." The war was no longer about truth. It was about justice. And justice was finally within her grasp. The arrest was only the beginning. His downfall unfolded like a slow-motion avalanche, one he had set into motion with his own greed. His debts piled higher than he could ever repay. The loans he had taken at suffocating interest rates closed in, collectors circling like wolves. The investments he thought would crown him a king collapsed into ash. One by one, his supposed friends distanced themselves, the calls stopped coming, and every door he once bragged he could open slammed shut. He tried bargaining. Tried clawing his way back. But even when he attempted to sell what little remained of his shares, the market laughed at him. What he thought would buy his freedom barely covered half of what he owed. He was a man drowning, and every hand he reached for pulled back. But his ruin wasn't his alone. Hannah Cole's carefully built illusion began to crumble too. At first, she stayed hidden, waiting for the storm to pass. But storms like these don't pass, they grow. The investigator dug deeper, peeling back the layers of her past. What surfaced was darker than anyone expected. School records. Reports of violence. A history of bullying. A reputation for manipulation that had followed her long before the spotlight ever found her. And then came the revelation that no publicist could bury, an old crime, a secret tied to blood. A stepmother whose sudden death had been whispered about, but never investigated. Until now. Her father, racked with guilt after years of silence, finally came forward. He confessed to protecting her, to hiding the truth, to letting her walk free when she should have faced justice long ago. His words became the nail in her coffin. And so, the actress who once smirked in the glow of cameras was dragged into the light for what she really was. Not a starlet. Not a rising name. But a woman who had built her life on lies, on stolen children, on blood she could never wash from her hands. Together, they stood exposed, him, broken by debt and deceit, and her, revealed as the architect of a crime that had haunted her family for years. Police cuffs clicked shut, cameras flashed, and the world watched as the empire they thought they had built together turned to dust. They had planned to erase her. Instead, they erased themselves. The cuffs had closed, the headlines had burned, and for the first time in years, she breathed freely. Her enemies weren't just defeated, they were dismantled. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment of her life had collapsed under the weight of truth. Her husband sat in a cell, stripped of the power he once flaunted, drowning in debts he could never repay. Once a man who carried himself like the center of the universe, he now stared blankly at walls that offered no escape. His voice, once sharp with arrogance, had dulled into silence. The world had forgotten him, and she had no reason to remember. Hannah Cole fared no better. The glitter of fame had rotted into scandal, her name smeared across every headline. But it wasn't the gossip columns that destroyed her, it was justice. The courts peeled open her past, exposing the cruelty she had hidden and the crime her father had confessed. Cameras no longer sought her out. Now, it was prison walls that caged her, the same walls she had tried to build around another woman's life. For the wife, the victory wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was the sound of her children's laughter filling the home. It was the warmth of small hands tugging at her sleeves. It was watching them sleep peacefully, knowing no one would ever steal them away again. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house glowed in gold, her son looked up at her with wide eyes. "Mommy, why are you smiling?" She brushed her fingers gently through his hair, her voice calm, steady. "Because, sweetheart, sometimes the bad people think they've won. But in the end, they always lose." And that was the truth. In a world where lies can grow like weeds, justice has a way of cutting them down. The mistress thought a paternity test would break her. But when the truth was revealed, it wasn't the wife who screamed. It was the mistress. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in her place?